come and join me on track this November for a special low numbers, relaxed atmosphere track day at one of my favourite circuits. For more details, follow the link in the description down below. Make sure your insurance doesn't come up short. Get gap cover with ALA. For more information, follow the links in the description. Hello everybody. Once upon a time, the BMW M car was a truly special thing, partly because there just weren't that many of them. Only 25 years ago, the M model lineup consisted of the M3, the M5, and the oft-forgotten Z3M. That was it. Today, go on the BMW website, and if you click the little M badge, you will be met with a frankly bewildering array of M cars, M lights, and other things you couldn't possibly imagine having an M badge on, and yet somehow still do. Yet, even with this being the case, there are still a few models that have yet to have the M magic sprinkled on them. And if for whatever reason the car of your dreams is a 4 Series Gran Coupe in M guise, well, I'm very sorry, BMW do not build it. But Alpina do. And today I'm going to be driving this, the B4 Gran Coupe, telling you whether it's any good, and if the Alpina badge really does mean this is a genuinely different car to just about everything else that wears the white and blue roundel. I'm James, and this is JayEmm on Cars. The very notion of a 4 Series Gran Coupe in any guise has always been a fairly baffling one, because the whole point of the 4 Series was it was going to give the 3 Series Coupe a bit more of its own personality. It enabled them to give it a more distinctive body style and make it an altogether more interesting and individual model. And to the point of a coupe is it has nicer styling because it's only got the 2 doors, which means it's got a different roofline, and it's the car you buy more for style as opposed to practicality. The notion then of trying to stick an extra set of doors on the back of one of those is just weird, because surely if you want a 4 Series with more doors, that's a 3 Series, and if you want a 4 Series but with more doors that's bigger, well, that's a 5 Series. In my head, there was never space for a 4 Series Gran Coupe. And yet, here we are. Not only does it exist, but it's actually one of the best-selling variants of the 4 Series. What a world we live in. And indeed, so popular is this format, BMW also used it as the basis of the i4, their electric 4 Series. I'd love to see them make a nice, sexy electric coupe. The last time they did that was the i8, and I think we can all agree that is a frankly stunning car, the likes of which I suspect and fear BMW may never match again. And the i4 was a car that actually had an awful lot going for it. And sat here as I am today in this, you can see more than a little bit of family resemblance. The exterior styling is very much the same, the interior is almost identical, and you do start asking yourself, what exactly about this car makes it an Alpina and not a BMW? Well, the first thing you'll notice is that styling. Not only does this car look utterly gorgeous in this metallic green over full white merino leather, I think the subtle Alpina styling touches actually suit the more brutal nature of BMW's recent output. The iconic Alpina graphics on the side and their distinctive 20-inch alloys really set the car off and to make it look, I think, an almost handsome thing. Almost. Open the door and you'll be greeted with this interior, which is now very familiar to anybody that's been in a recent BMW, which is a mix of both the good and the bad. You've got a very large screen up here divided into two sections. The display for the driver here, which naturally is now blue tinted for the Alpina, and to the left effectively your standard modern day iDrive, which mercifully can be controlled either as a touch display or from the selector down here. Once you get used to it, it's not actually a bad system, and there's certainly a lot of configuration available, though I will never forgive BMW for taking away the physical HVAC controls, temperature and the like now being relegated to the touchscreen. And this is particularly baffling, not only because by the time this car went into production, everybody knew that everybody didn't like that sort of stuff, but also because there is plenty of space here for there to be proper physical buttons. And on the subject of space, the boot here is very generous, but the rear seats somewhat less so. I can fit in the back of this, but only just, and it is only my little short legs that actually let me sit behind myself in something approaching comfort. Visibility also isn't great. You've got a fairly chunky A pillar, pretty big B pillar that's a bit too far forward for my liking, and out the back you can see what's going on, but because of that hatch that you've got, it's actually a little bit more restricted than you might like. And I have to admit to a level of disappointment when it comes to the interior of this car, because you see, I grew up in an era where an M car was an already fairly special thing. An Alpina was almost unheard of, and when you spoke to people who knew what those cars were about, the first thing they'd tell you is it was like a BMW, but made by a company that spent a lot more money on the thing. So you got in one and the leather was just better. Everything in it felt that little bit nicer. Yes, of course, they always reused all of the switches and things. There is a limit to what they can do. And very often the cars were partnered with a genuinely bespoke engine, often rebuilt from the ground up with capacities you'd never get in a regular BMW. And though it would certainly be unfair to call this a bad or low quality interior, there are certainly a few too many patches of cheap, scratchy plastic about the place for a car which cost, once optioned, £100,000. And it is even more galling when you see that options list included things like this full white merino leather at near £4,000, the admittedly very impressive looking upgrade brakes at £1,700, and really quite disturbingly, the heated seats at just over 300 quid. Come on now, this is an £82,000 base price car. That is penny pinching, pure and simple, and not, I think, befitting of the brand. I was talking earlier with this car's owner, James, and he agreed that for him, Alpina really should be almost a trim level, in that you buy an Alpina and there isn't really that much to specify, because you just get the lot. I think particularly here in Britain, that'd help it make a lot more sense. I got a few friends of mine who are really into their BMWs, particularly my buddy Michael. We've both got a bit of a thing for Alpinas, and I know he's considered buying one on many occasions. And we'll swap Auto Trader listings, and sometimes you'll look at one and go, wow, look at that, it's fantastic. Other times you'll look at it and go, I don't really even understand what is Alpina about that car. Now you do of course get a few plaques and things in here to remind you you are in something a little bit different, and most importantly, up front you've got a very big difference. Okay, it's no longer a bespoke engine, but it's also an engine you'll never get in any other 4 Series Gran Coupe. For here in the Alpina B4 you'll get the BMW S58, the same engine as you get in the M4. And if you were to go to BMW and ask for their most powerful Gran Coupe, you'll get the M440i, with its B58 and 370 horsepower and 369 pounds-feet of torque. Here, it's close to 500 horsepower and 538 pounds-feet of torque. That's 730 newton meters, giving this car a 0 to 62 time of 3.7 seconds, a top speed of over 180 miles an hour. And this is also paired with Alpina-specific tuning for the gearbox, which allegedly is also reinforced. It's still the ZF8 speed, but that's fine. It's the only gearbox you'd really want in a car like this. And they've also tuned the suspension the Alpina way. But it's still a 2-ton bus. Can it really be any good down a country road? Well, time to find out. Let's pop it into manual mode, engage sport, the dash changes, let's go. The simple answer, not really. This is a truly bizarre car. It started off quite well. The steering's got a nice weighting to it, seems to respond quite keenly, and the suspension feels quite well tailored for these roads too. In fact, I'd say one of the better of the BMW systems that I've experienced lately. And yes, in this video I am going to keep referring to this car as a BMW, and that's for a couple of reasons. First off, we all know that underneath the badge it is a BMW, and secondly, Alpina are now a part of BMW. And for that reason alone, I think it's more critical than ever before that they find a way of making the brand stand out. Because I don't want it to turn into just a trim level for a car. I want an Alpina to be something truly bespoke. I'd love to see BMW give Alpina the same freedom as Mercedes are given AMG. Let's have an Alpina model, a whole car that's just an Alpina. That'd be properly special. Kinda unlikely, but still, I can live in hope. For now though, it's not hope that is taking me, instead frustration and confusion, because I think this might be one of the laggiest engines I have driven in quite some time. I don't understand how they've done it. What makes this really quite so upsetting is the fact that many BMW turbos of late have been truly brilliant. This one is frankly maddening. I'll do my normal 30 to 60 test. And I'm currently in second gear at 30 miles an hour, just over 3,000 RPM now. I'm just tickling the throttle, so it's not like the car's got nothing. I'm in a straight line, gonna wait for this cyclist to go past, because I don't like accelerating past them, that's rude. Morning, and here we go, foot down. There's the power. All right, let's give the car even more help. Second gear, 5,000 RPM. Then it starts to respond. But only just. What is going on here? This is bizarre. The chassis too. It takes those lumps and bumps, but when you then start to press on, it also feels like it gets just a little bit out of shape. And the thing is, I could kind of forgive a chassis like that if you had this nice, big, lazy engine, like an old school, naturally aspirated V8, which had plenty of torque and a beautiful response. Then the two would work together very, very well. Instead, what you've got here is both a chassis and engine that have a little bit of delay in them. And that makes the whole thing feel like at any given moment, it could come undone rather spectacularly. And what's so frustrating is there are little flashes of brilliance in this thing. The gearbox is very, very good, does exactly what I tell it to when I tell it to. Doesn't have the bite or the snap of an M car, but neither should it. This is an Alpina. I'm gonna pop the thing back into comfort mode for a little bit and see how that does. Really is quite comfortable in that setting, I've got to say. That I do quite like and I do appreciate. And I think maybe it is the combination of the chassis and the engine, not one or the other, that is creating quite such an unpleasant experience. And really, it is the engine which is doing things wrong. When you put your foot down, it's fast. On the Autobahn, I'm sure this thing would be absolutely fantastic. Now, there's a few weird tests that car people sometimes do, and there's one that I know others do as well, and you tell me if you do it. I do the kick down test. Now, in an auto, you have to be in manual mode, which I know sounds odd, but what you do is you stab the throttle, foot all the way down and back, and you see if the car does anything. Let's try this. And in here, it's pretty disappointing. It's only really once my foot is off the throttle that it actually does something. I like the noise that it makes. Quite cultured, refined, again, I think appropriate for an Alpina. And just in case you're sat there wondering, where on earth do I even get an Alpina from in Britain? Well, there is only one official importer, which is Sytner of Nottingham. They have had the Alpina concession for quite some time now, though if you do want to configure your own, Alpina themselves have got their own configurator, though last time I checked it was all German. And though there are a few bespoke Alpina touches, there are nowhere near as many as I'd like. Today also, it's worth pointing out that the B4 Gran Coupe has technically been retired in favour of the new B4 Gran Coupe GT, which now has another 30 horsepower, the same amount of torque, marginally better 0 to 60 and top speeds, and allegedly slightly better suspension, but they are very, very vague as to what exactly that means. This was not specified by James from new. Instead, it was ordered by Alpina as effectively a demonstrator, had hung around the showrooms for a while, and then he managed to get a good deal on it. And this wasn't actually a car he ever considered. What he previously had was a 911 992 GTS, which he did order from new, had waited quite some time for, and then found himself quite disappointed with. Not that there was anything really wrong with the car itself, instead it was simply his usage scenario. And he found that in reality, most of the time he spent behind the wheel was either on the school run or going to the station. And he then found on the rare occasion he did have the time and the space to really enjoy the car, it wanted to go a little quicker than he did in order for him to really enjoy it. And 6 months of the year, because he'd ordered the two-wheel drive version, it was a little bit sketchy. He then decided that what he wanted was something a little more practical, a little more usable, but still that was a little bit special when he wanted it to be. He started off looking at large 4x4s, X5M and the like, and then it was his friend Adam who said, "Have you considered an Alpina?" He went looking, found this and bought it sight unseen. And to behold, it is a gorgeous thing, and in concept I really, really like it. But from in here, well, if you were to give me a choice of this at, say, let's just call it £70,000, or an i4 as I recently drove at, let's just call it £40,000, I'm going to get the i4 every time. It handled just as well, if not maybe a little bit better. The powertrain was infinitely better because, of course, as an electric car, there was no lag in it whatsoever. And you can get those for far, far less than one of these. Now, as a new proposition, I think this is probably the much more sensible buy. Alpinas do tend to do a reasonable job of holding their money, certainly compared to anything electric. And the last Alpina I drove, I really enjoyed. That was the B3. This, I'm sorry, from the driver's seat, where it should really shine, just doesn't. And this is going to be very awkward, because when I get back to the car park, and James has brought Adam along, I know Adam's got an M135iX drive, which I also gave a bit of a battering. Sorry, lads. Better luck next time. And for BMW, well, I really hope you can get your act together, because if this is what Alpinas are to be, I don't really see the point in the brand. I think with Alpina, BMW have got a genuinely special opportunity to create something quite amazing. I just want them to do the right thing with the brand. Thus far, not impressed. But there'll always be a next time, and hopefully that'll be a winner. For now, I wish to say a big thank you to James for bringing this car out, and as ever, to you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.